Hey guys, I am back and ready for another video. I'm gonna be pushing out some more content for you guys now that I'm back. Thank you guys for all of the love in Discord, in the comments section. You guys have been great. We literally just hit 2,000 subscribers, and that's bonkers to me because this has just been a hobby and sort of a side project for me. Today's video is going to be about runes. Runes are extremely important, so I need you guys to be paying attention the whole time. There's a lot of things that I talk about, but mostly it's about the theory of building monsters. I want you guys to understand best how to build a monster based off of the skills of that monster. I hope this video helps you. If you've liked my content so far, think about leaving a subscription down below. All right, guys, let's get to the video. So I know that some of you are Summoners War veterans and know everything there is to know about runes and team building. So if that's you, make sure to correct me and add your wisdom down in the comment section after the video. For those of you who are new to Summoners War, this is a beginner-friendly guide to runes. Your runes are easily the most important thing for mid to late game progression into dungeons and later PvP. Each monster can be equipped with up to 6 runes at a time, one in each of the 6 slots, and they are appropriately numbered and have a specific shape, so they only fit in that slot. Slot 1 is always a flat attack main stat. In the substats area, you can roll any combination of stats. I'm going to use the term rolling a lot, which is referring to the randomization of getting stats when you level up a rune. Slot 2 can have HP %, defense %, attack %, or attack speed. They can also have flat stats, but those suck and you will never use them. Slot 3 is always a flat defense main stat and can have any substat except attack %. Slot 4 is a unique one, and that is that it can have HP %, defense %, attack %, but also crit rate and crit damage. Again, no flat stats here, % is better. Crit rate or crit damage will be your go-to stat for your damage dealers in this slot. Slot 5 is always a flat HP main stat and can have any combination of substats. Slot 6 is our final slot and can have HP %, defense %, attack %, but also accuracy and resistance %. We generally steer clear of these main stats and focus on HP, defense, and attack %. You should primarily get enough accuracy and resistance from substats. If a monster really relies on getting a certain debuff off, then accuracy main stat might be in order. Your runes come in 10 different flavors, or sets, meaning that if you equip 2 or 4 of the same type of rune, you will receive an additional bonus stat. When you are completing the story, this is less important, but will become vital later in the game. Some runes typically only require 2 runes to make a set, while others require 4. Let's look at each set individually. By the way, sets can be stacked, so you can have the same set 3 times if you want. Energy runes. These give your monsters 15% more HP, which is great for support monsters or for a monster like Konamiya who does healing based off their HP. The Guard rune set gives a monster 15% more defense. This is a good option for support monsters and a good choice for warrior monsters that typically deal damage based off defense. Blade rune set increases your crit chance by 12%. These are great for basically every damage dealer monster. Rage runes, this set increases crit damage by 40%, and is one of the few sets that need 4 total runes. This is a must-have for most damage dealers. Just make sure you pair it with a good blade set to make sure that you're actually landing those crits. Fatal sets. This just equals more attack stat, which generally equals more damage. It increases your monster's attack by 35% and is the other set that requires 4 total runes. Now, while having more attack is generally good, I would argue that a good Rage Blade set with crit rate and crit damage is way more beneficial to your DPS monsters. This Fatal set is just not used very often. Swift sets are a big change from the original Summoners War Sky Arena game. Now they increase your attack speed by 25%, which basically takes your monster from this to this. Swift sets essentially make your basic attack go off more often. This is typically very good for monsters that get a lot of value out of their basic attacks. Monsters like Karambit, Theomars, Cassie, and even Lyn. Focus sets increase your monster's accuracy, which helps them to land their debuffs. This is a great set for monsters that rely heavily on their debuffs to be useful. Endure Sets. Increase your monster's resistance to enemy debuffs by 15%. So if you're going up against a monster or a boss that puts out a lot of debuffs, you may look at an Endure Set. Endure Sets are typically not my first choice, but if they have good substats, they can be very useful on supports and other tanky monsters like knights that need to stay on the battlefield for a long period of time. Foresight runes are one of the newcomer rune sets and grant a monster additional 15% to their evasion stat. This is a new stat in Summoner's War which makes your monsters harder to hit. Bosses or monsters can literally miss their attacks, dealing no damage at all. Assemble runes. This set increases precision by 15%. Remember that you can miss your attacks now. Well, assemble runes help your monsters do that less. A quick note on precision and assemble runes. These are only affecting the basic attack, not your skills. So the precision stat will allow your monsters to land their basic attacks more often, while the foresight set or the evasion stat will allow your monsters to not get hit by the enemy's basic attacks. The Despair set is a recent addition to the game. It requires 4 total runes, and when you have that set complete, there is a 17% chance to stun with a skill. This does not work on basic attacks. Also, a newcomer is the Vampire set. This is also a set of 4, and its set effect is Drain 25%. So essentially, you'll be healing yourself back up as you do damage. This is great for tanky damage dealers. Powering up your runes is essential as it will increase your base stats. While this is important, just as important is the substats. When you get a white rune, it will have no substats, and as you power it up to plus 12, you will get 4 new substats. The higher level or rarity of the rune, the more base substats it comes with. When you plus 12 a rune, you get 4 additional stats. For a white rune, that's 4 brand new stats, and for a legendary rune, since you already have 4, those 4 new stats go into the original 4. Of course, netting you with more substats in total, and a better chance of getting the substats that you want. As you progress through the game and complete higher level rune dungeons, you're going to be getting a lot of new runes. Most of these runes are not going to be useful for you, so you're going to be having to go through your rune box often in order to figure out whether or not you can have a replacement for an old rune. You're going to be getting a lot of runes, so click this filter button to be able to sort through which runes you'd like. You can sort by the type of rune set and the substats or main stat of that rune. So typically, I will find a monster that I'm wanting to build. Let's take Argon for instance. I will filter based off of Rage and Blade runes since he's best on those, and then I will look for main stats that I'm looking for. Attack percentage for slot 2, crit damage for slot 4, and for slot 6, another attack percent. I can also add additional filters like more attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage. With farming so many runes, you're going to have to put some into storage. I would highly suggest starting to open up more of these storage containers as you need them. When you're ready to build a monster, go to your rune storage, hit the View Details button, and you can look at your runes before you bring them over into your bag. Once they're in your bag, you can then begin to power those up, see how they roll, and see if they will be able to replace the existing runes you have. When farming runes, it is important to be a little picky and don't keep and power up every rune you get. This is a bad habit that I kept from the original Sky Arena game. You want to look at the set of the rune as well as the type of substats as well as the efficiency of the substats. This is an amazing energy rune with all substats that I want on a tanky HP healing monster, but the efficiency is on the lower side. I typically want to be looking for S and A tier substats so I get more out of this particular rune. Now, if I was early game, I would certainly take this rune, level it up, and put it on one of my tanky monsters, but as a late game player, I have to be a little bit more picky about what runes I take. This one is basically the same stats, but with a much better efficiency. Lock this rune and power it up to see how it rolls. This rune has S and A tier substats, but the substats themselves are not the ones that I'm looking for on an energy rune. I want HP percent, defense percent, and other stats like resistance and evasion that would be good for tanky support monsters. For Rage and Blade runes, we want attack and crit stats. This is a poor rune because it is mostly flat stats and some tanky substats. This is a very high tier efficiency Rage rune, but it's missing the crucial stats that we need on a Rage set, which is crit rate, crit damage, and attack typically. This Rage rune is already powered up, but it has all of the stats that I'm looking for on a Rage rune. I would rather have accuracy instead of resistance, but sometimes you just gotta use what you got. There are some monsters that are damage dealers based off their defense or their HP, so some Rage runes with the defense percent stat like this one would be great for defense scaling damage dealers like Bulldozer. Enchantments. You can take your runes even further beyond. With effects and enchantments. Warning, you need a lot of these enchantment stones, books, and gems to level up your alchemy profession. I would highly suggest not using any of these enchantments on your runes and equipment until you get to around level 6 or 7 in alchemy. You're going to need a lot of these stones to level up your alchemy, and they are extremely expensive to craft. Once you get to that level 6 or 7, you'll have a good idea of what things you need to keep and what things you can use, and you can start using those effect stones. The effect window is pretty simple to use. You take one of these effect stones and it adds the effect. These effect stones come in different colors, which indicate the stats that it has and also the different levels. The bigger and shinier they are, the more stats you'll gain from those effect stones. You can actually make these yourself in the alchemy profession, so out of all the professions, this is one of your most important for progression. The enchantments essentially work the same way, but you have these spell books that also come in different colors and levels. If you want to use your lower ones on decent 5-star runes, that's fine. You can always override the enchantment with another one. When you do override the enchantment, you will lose the original book, so it's best to really be careful with these enchantment books as well as the enchantment stones. Let's look at a couple monsters that a lot of you guys are using and get a better idea on the process of runing them. Konamiya is a knight monster who does a surprising amount of healing for only 3 mana. Neither of these skills rely on any particular stat to be useful, but if we look at the healing, it is based on Kona's max HP. So the more HP we can get on Konamiya, the more healing she will put out, and the harder she will be to kill. So from reading the skills, we have determined that we want to build Konamiya on as much HP as possible. Defense would be the next most important stat, with evasion and resistance next. I call all of these extra stats luxury stats because if we can get them, great, but early game we should be focusing on the important stats. Now, I would love to have Kona on a triple energy set, but sometimes you just don't have enough runes for that, and you have to break it up. Evasion, guard, and even resistance sets are all okay for frontline units. Before we move on to another monster, let's look at Kona's main competition, Tion. Now, I know I have joked about Tion, but she is also an amazing monster. Her skills may seem similar to Kona, but they are quite different. Skill 2 is pretty much the same, but if you look at Skill 3, the description says that she recovers based off the target's HP. So my little Naomi here is very squishy and doesn't have a lot of HP, so this skill will only heal about 15,000 HP. Whereas Kona would heal about 5,000 more HP on the same rune set. Kona is typically better at healing all around, but if you're running a bunch of other tanky monsters along with your Tion, then Tion would actually be better because the target's HP on tanky monsters is typically quite high. Let's look at Azalea the Fire Pixie. Damage dealer monsters like Sekhmet or the Fire Fairy are damage dealers and typically do damage based off attack percent. Slot 2 should be attack percent. Slot 4 should be either crit damage or crit rate, where slot 6 should also be attack. For all the other stats and for substats, it's general that you'll be looking for crit rate and crit damage. And of course, more attack percent. And for many DPS, some accuracy is important to land some of those crucial debuffs, or in the case of Sekhmet, steal buffs. Now, just to be clear, if your main stat is an attack percent stat, then you won't be getting attack percent as a sub-stat. So on slots 2 and 6 with attack percent main stat, you're going to be looking for those other stats we mentioned, crit rate and crit damage, along with some accuracy. Sekhmet is going to be extremely similar to Fire Pixie with lots of attack, crit, and also some accuracy as that luxury stat. Shannon. For your healer and support type monsters, you typically want as much HP percent and defense percent as possible. Evasion is also a great stat, and it keeps your monsters from dying and allows them to provide more utilities on the battlefield for a longer amount of time. Shannon doesn't do any healing or anything like that, so having as much HP as possible is not as much a priority as it would be on another monster. Slots 2, 4, and 6 should be a combination of HP percent and defense, leaning more towards HP. You could go HP, HP, and defense if you want. Shannon also has some important debuffs, including defense down on a single target and attack down, so she also needs a lot of accuracy to be consistent and useful. Let's look at another popular healer, Chloe. She does healing based off of her HP, so you want to build her with as much HP as possible. Next, look for defense, and finally, you can focus on evasion and resistance for your luxury stats because she doesn't apply any debuffs and therefore doesn't need any accuracy. Shushu is an amazing monster that heals based off their own HP and applies immunity, so no accuracy needed. Stack as much HP percent and defense percent as possible, with your luxury stats being evasion and resistance. Karambit is unique, as he is one of the few monsters that has some extra stuff on their basic attack. In this case, each basic attack has a good chance of ignoring things like damage taken down and defense up, and also has a good chance to do defense penetrating damage. This means you want him attacking as much as possible, so we will build him with attack speed. A good swift set with attack, crit damage, and attack with more attack and crit in the substats along with additional attack speed. You could even use an attack speed slot 2 rune instead of an attack percent rune. Remember, attack speed affects your basic attack, so a monster with a high attack speed will be utilizing their basic attack more often. Another monster who could be built with a swift set is Rune. Rune heals every basic attack, so having Rune attack as often as possible would be best. But instead of a damage swift build, you would use a swift set with HP and defense runes in slot 2, 4, and 6, because this is more of a tanky monster that doesn't really do damage, but you want that monster alive as long as possible to do healing and apply those other buffs. Bulldozer. Bulldozer is a damage monster who does damage based off attack and defense. You could build him with a couple different sets, Rage Blade or even Guard Blade. Main stats are typically attack, crit damage, and defense. For substats, you want to focus more on defense and more attack. Naomi. Naomi is an amazing damage dealer for raid bosses like Foggy Prison and White Shadow Castle coming up. She is a typical damage dealer utilizing a Rage Blade set. Her passive, though, allows her to get more crit rate when she attacks a target with lots of debuffs. To build Naomi, go with the Rage Blade set with as much attack and crit damage as possible. I still like to keep her around 40 to 50% crit rate, so that way if the boss goes down to 4 or 5 debuffs, my Naomi is still outputting at nearly 100% crit rate. But you can be even a little less on the crit rate, and on raid bosses this is still a ton of value. Helia. The last unit I want to cover is Helia, our favorite big damage enabler. As an assassin, she is a damage dealer, but I like to think of her more as a support for my other monsters and my summoner. She applies those crucial damage debuffs, defense down and damage taken up, allowing my team to put out big damage numbers and blow through dungeons and raids. You could build her on a typical damage set, but I like to build her a little tankier with lots of accuracy. I don't want her dying immediately, so I give her some HP and defense, and I also don't want her missing her crucial debuffs, so I build her with lots of accuracy. Alright guys, I hoped this helped you make better decisions with your runes. The most important thing you can do when runing your monsters is to read their skill descriptions thoroughly. This will help you understand what they do and what stats they need to do it. Your runes will get better and better, and you will be able to farm higher level dungeons and even take on the Spires of Ascension. There is a vast array of monsters and skill types that require all types of different builds and stats. There's even plenty of monsters where different types of builds are highly debatable. If you want to go over a specific monster and talk about how to build them, leave a comment down below or join the Discord, link is in the description. If you like my Summoners War content, make sure to subscribe to see more. As always, I'm TopherSmurf telling you to keep on gaming.